Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and I hope you enjoy this story compilation. Let's get into it. I've been working the night shift at the Chevron off Highway 165 for 2 years now. 2 years of empty nights and half-dead mornings, just me and the machines that never stop humming. If you've never worked the graveyard shift, it's hard to explain the way silence sounds out here. It's not the clean kind of silence you get in the woods. It's the kind that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. By midnight, traffic dies completely. The swamp gets louder than the highway, frogs croaking, something rustling in the brush just past the floodlights. Out here, even the bugs sound restless. Inside, it's all neon and hum. The buzz from the coolers, the coffee pot wheezing out its last bit of life, the ice machine thumping every 5 minutes, like a heartbeat that's off rhythm. I try to keep busy, stocking shelves, mopping, counting change. The truth is, it's lonely work. You start talking to yourself after a while, and the bad part is, you start answering back. The landline on the counter's been here longer than I have. Beige plastic, the cord curled up like a sleeping snake. We don't even list the number anywhere. Dillard, the owner, says it's just for emergencies, but the damn thing still rings sometimes, even though I've never heard a voice on the other end. That's why I noticed it so fast last Thursday night. The little red light on the phone, blinking. It wasn't fast, like a warning. It was slow, measured, one pulse every few seconds, steady as breathing. I figured maybe Dillard left a message, or one of the day shift girls forgot to delete something. But something about that slow blink, something about how deliberate it looked, made my stomach twist. I hesitated, watched it blink a few more times, the reflection painting a dull red on the countertop. Then I sighed and picked up the receiver. One new voicemail. Static crackled through the earpiece, soft at first, then came breathing, faint but close. It was steady and low, the kind of breathing someone makes when they're hiding. Then a whisper, sharp enough to freeze me mid-motion. "Don't come in tomorrow." And just like that, it cut off. No caller ID, no timestamp, just those 4 words. At first I thought maybe it was a prank, some local idiot trying to get a rise out of me. But the thing that stuck in my head wasn't the message, it was the voice, because it didn't sound like me. I think it was me. I didn't sleep after that shift. I told myself it was just some weird prank, but the sound of my own voice whispering, those words wouldn't leave my head. "Don't come in tomorrow." It looped every time I closed my eyes. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. The speakers in that old phone are so bad, half the time everyone just sounds like they're underwater. But when I walked in that next night, I swear the air felt wrong. Heavier, the same way it feels before a thunderstorm. The phone was quiet this time. No blinking light, no calls. Still, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Every little noise made me jump. The cooler compressor clicking on, the wind rattling the glass, the hum of a truck passing miles down the road. I kept replaying that voice in my head, trying to pick apart every breath, every tone, to prove it wasn't me. But it was. It was my voice, down to the rasp, down to the tired drag in the words. Around 2:45 a.m., the red light started blinking again, slow and steady. I felt my pulse match its rhythm. I didn't want to touch it. I really didn't. But my hands moved on their own, like something deep down wanted me to hear that voice again. The message started the same way, soft static, faint breathing. Then came my voice, closer this time, like I was standing right behind myself. "You didn't listen. You shouldn't have come in." Then a sound I couldn't mistake. The creak of the front door opening, the exact sound that door makes when someone walks in after midnight. I looked up instantly. The door was closed, locked, no one there. But the phone was still pressed to my ear, and I could hear the sound of shoes moving across the floor, echoing through the line. Slow, deliberate steps coming closer. matching the rhythm of my own breath. I froze. The last thing I heard before the line went dead was that same voice again, quieter, closer. "You don't get to leave early tonight." I dropped the receiver, and it swung back and forth, tapping against the counter. The red light stopped blinking. The store was silent again, except for that damn tapping, steady and slow. That's when I realized something else. The footsteps hadn't stopped. The footsteps were soft, measured, like someone didn't want to be heard but wasn't exactly trying to hide either. They came from somewhere deep in the aisles, behind the coolers. I told myself it was an animal, a raccoon maybe, that got in through the storage door. But animals don't sound like that. Animals scurry. They don't walk. I grabbed the flashlight we keep under the counter and started toward the back. The air felt thick, almost damp, like the fog outside had found a way in. The light flickered a little as I moved. The battery was half dead. "Hello." My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It came out thinner, quieter. Something shifted just around the corner. I caught a flash of movement between the shelves. Too tall to be anything small. Then everything went still. That's when I noticed the phone again. It was off the hook. Not hanging from the counter anymore, but lying on the tile near my feet. The cord stretched tight like something had pulled it down. And through the receiver, I could still hear breathing. Not mine though. Deeper, rougher, right there in my ear, even though the phone was on the ground. The flashlight dimmed. The shadows stretched, and I started backing away. My foot brushed something, the plastic, wet floor sign, and the sound echoed through the whole damn store. The breathing stopped. Then the voicemail tone chimed again. One new message. I swear to God I didn't touch it. The message just started playing on its own. "You shouldn't have come in. Now you can't leave." Then, beneath the voice, another sound. Faint but clear, the scrape of fingernails against glass. I turned toward the front window, and my heart dropped. There, pressed against the fogged glass of the door, was a face. My face. Paler, eyes open too wide, mouth moving like it was whispering, but I couldn't hear a word through the glass. I stumbled back and hit the counter hard enough to knock over the coffee pot. The smell of burnt grounds filled the air. When I looked back, the face was gone. Only a faint handprint was left on the glass. The lights flickered once, twice, then everything went black. In the dark, the phone started ringing. Not the landline, my cell. When I lifted it to my ear, the voicemail playback started instantly. My own voice, whispering like before. "Don't come in tomorrow. It's already here." Then static. The power came back a few minutes later. Everything looked the same, like nothing had happened. The handprint was gone, the fog already thinning outside. I finished my shift in silence. Didn't tell Dillard a dang thing. But tonight, my phone's blinking again. One new voicemail. Same number, same voice. And this time, it just says one word. "Run." It's strange how a voice can sound like yours, but not belong to you. Maybe it was just a glitch, some crossed signal out in the dark. Maybe it was something worse. They say recordings can hold more than sound, that sometimes they trap pieces of us, the echoes that shouldn't come back. So if you ever hear your own voice calling from the other side of the line, don't answer. Some warnings aren't meant for saving you. They're just letting you know it's already too late. Story 2. I've lived in this house for almost a year. It's nothing special. Small, quiet, tucked away behind a few oaks that block the streetlights. It's the kind of place you'd think you would feel safe, but that night, it didn't. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when I first noticed him. At first, I didn't recognize what I was seeing. Just a shadow, I thought. Thrown, long and thin, across the wall. The lamp in the corner flickered a little, and the silhouette seemed to stretch unnaturally. But then I realized it wasn't the lamp. It wasn't the shadow of anything in the room. It was something else, tall and thin, standing perfectly still in the farthest corner of the living room. The kind of figure that makes your stomach flip without moving a muscle. He wasn't leaning, crouching, or slumping, just standing there like he'd always been part of the furniture. I blinked, and he didn't. I froze, the phone slipping from my hand, clattering softly against the couch cushion. I didn't move for a moment, just staring. He stayed in the corner, unmoving. The way the dim lamp light caught him made it hard to see details. No face, no clothes, no discernible features, just a black humanoid silhouette. I told myself it was a trick of the light. I told myself I was imagining it. I've seen shadows play weird tricks before, twisting across walls, shapes that look like people when nothing's really there. So I stood up, careful not to move too quickly. I circled the room, checking behind the couch, the small bookshelves, the corners of the ceiling. Nothing and no one. When I looked back at the corner, he was still there. I wanted to run, but my feet felt heavy. My throat felt tight. I remember thinking, maybe he's a neighbor's kid playing a prank. But the windows were all locked, the doors were all locked, and the street outside was empty. I sat back down, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Tried to focus on my phone, tried to ignore the feeling of being watched. And then I noticed the shadows on the floor. They weren't right. They didn't match the furniture. They stretched and bent toward him, as if the darkness itself was moving around him, creeping toward the center of the room. I don't know how long I sat there, staring. Minutes, hours. Time felt wrong. Eventually, I forced myself to lie down on the couch. I kept the lamp on, thinking that if I kept it bright, maybe I could convince myself there was nothing there. But I slept with one eye open, and when I woke up, the first thing I saw, the first thing my brain registered, was him, standing in the corner. Morning sunlight pouring in. Everything else, ordinary. And yet, he was still there. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared back at him. That's when I realized something horrible. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't trying to scare me. He wasn't going anywhere. The next night I started noticing him everywhere. It began subtly. I'd be in the kitchen pouring a cup of coffee, and a corner of my vision would catch a shadow stretching across the far wall. I'd spin around, heart hammering. Nothing. Then I'd glance back and he'd be there, still watching. By midnight I couldn't move through the house without seeing him. Every corner I passed, the living room, the hallway, the doorway to the bathroom, he was standing there, always perfectly still, always just at the edge of my vision. And somehow, every time I looked back, he had moved. It didn't make sense. I was the only one in the house. There were no mirrors that could hide him and reflect him wrong. No furniture that could throw the shape across the walls. I tried to tell myself it was my mind playing tricks, but the panic was real. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind through the cracked window felt amplified, like he could hear me thinking. I started marking the corners with bits of tape and sticky notes. Living room corner, hallway corner, bathroom corner. By the third night, the tape wasn't enough. I came home after work to find small smudges on the walls where I'd never touched them. Long, dark streaks that weren't paint or dust. They led from one corner to another, almost like they were following a path. And I saw him in every corner I looked at. Not just one, all of them, at the same time. I froze. My pulse shot into my throat. I tried moving, trying to see if it was a trick of the light, but no matter where I looked, there he was, each figure standing taller, darker, and closer. The corners felt alive, like they were watching me, waiting. I started hearing the softest sounds at night. Footsteps, too quiet to be mine. Whispering that didn't form words but felt urgent. Something breathing in the shadows. I stayed in the living room that night. Lights on, door locked. I didn't sleep. Every time I blinked, a corner of the room seemed to stretch, elongate, and when my eyes opened, there he was, closer than before. I didn't know how long I sat like that. Minutes, hours, maybe until sunrise. By the next morning, I realized something else. He wasn't just standing in the corners. He was watching me everywhere I went. I could feel it. I could feel the weight of him pressing down from every shadow, every nook of the house. And that's when I started to understand the truth. This wasn't a house I lived in. It was a cage. I haven't left the house in 3 days. I don't think I could, even if I wanted to. Every time I walk toward the front door, the hallway stretches, literally stretches. The corners bend inwards, the walls narrowing around me like the house itself is breathing. I tried once, running straight for the door, but no matter how far I moved, I never seemed to get closer. And when I looked back, he was there, in every corner. I can't tell if it's still one of him or if there are more now. They look identical, the same black silhouettes, each standing perfectly still, their heads tilted just slightly, like they're listening, like they're waiting. At first, I thought maybe if I ignored them, they'd fade. I stopped looking at the corners. I closed my eyes when I walked past them. I even turned off the lights, hoping darkness would swallow them whole. It didn't. When the lights went out, they glowed, faintly, pale silhouettes, like a negative image burning into the air. I could see them even with my eyes closed. I could feel them moving closer, step by step, their presence vibrating to the floorboards, through the walls. I started counting how many corners there were in the house. 4 in the living room, 4 in the bedroom, 2 in the hallway. 10 corners in total. Now, there are 11. The wall in my bedroom split last night. Not like it cracked. It opened, widening just enough to form a new corner I'd never seen before. And he was standing in it, his shape pulsing slightly, like he was breathing for the first time. I haven't slept. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see him closer, standing over the bed, the edges of his shape flickering like smoke. Sometimes I hear him whisper. The voice sounds wrong, too deep, like it's coming from behind the walls. He says my name, over and over. I tried calling for help earlier tonight. My phone wouldn't dial. The screen glitched, the text distorted, until every line of it just repeated the same phrase. Don't turn around. I dropped the phone. I didn't move. Then I realized something. It wasn't the phone typing that. It was a reflection. Behind me, in the screen, I saw a shape, taller than before, filling half the room. The corners aren't corners anymore. They're doorways, and they're all open now. If you find this, if you hear this, do not look into the corners of your house, because once you see him, he stares back at you. I thought it would end if I stayed awake. I thought I could ignore it, but the corners, they don't forgive. I can feel him even when I close my eyes. I can see the shapes of him stretching across the walls, pressing closer with every breath I take. Some houses aren't empty. Some houses wait, and some watch. So if you ever notice a shadow that doesn't belong, or a corner that wasn't there before, don't turn around, because once you see him, you'll never ever be alone again. Story 3. I was 3 months behind on rent when I saw the ad. Night security needed. Ashbury State Hospital, $22 an hour. Must start immediately. Overnight shift only. No experience required, no background check. That should have been a warning, but I didn't care. I just needed the money. Ashbury State Hospital, set off an old service road about 10 miles past town. The kind of place you only see once and remember forever. The parking lot was cracked, open by tree roots, and most of the windows had been boarded up decades ago. It looked abandoned, but the power was still on. Inside, the air smelled like bleach and dust, that sharp, chemical kind of clean that never hides the rot underneath. A man in a faded gray uniform met me by the reception desk. His badge said H. Collins. He didn't shake my hand or even look at me. He just handed me a clipboard with a single sheet of yellow paper and said, "Read these, follow them exactly, don't ask questions." The paper looked old, typewritten, not printed. 10 rules in all. 1. Make your rounds every hour, on the hour. 2. Do not enter the west wing after midnight. 3. If you hear someone call your name, do not respond. 4. The elevators do not work. If one opens, walk away. 5. Keep the lights on in the main hall, always. 6. Between 2 and 3 a.m., remain in the guard office. 7. Do not answer the phone unless it rings twice. 8. If you see a patient in uniform, escort them to room 9 and lock the door. 9. Never look inside room 9. 10. When you leave at sunrise, do not look back at the building. I looked up from the list, expecting him to laugh, but Collins was dead serious. He rubbed at his eyes, then said quietly, "I'll be honest with you, kid. I don't know why they still pay for security here, but the ones who don't follow the rules don't last long." I told myself he was just trying to mess with me. I'd worked worse jobs, but when he handed me the keys, his hands were shaking. My shift started at midnight sharp. The old clock behind the front desk ticked so loud I could feel it in my teeth. I tried to shake off the nerves. I told myself this was just another night job. Easy money. Watch the halls, keep the lights on, don't think too hard about the creepy rule sheet in my pocket. I started my first patrol through the east wing. The floors were a patchwork of cracked tile and dried footprints, like someone had tracked mud through years ago and had just stayed. Most of the rooms were empty, filled with dust and old wheelchairs. But what got me were the mirrors. Every few rooms had one, all covered with brown paper, taped along the edges. Some looked scratched from the inside. When I came around toward the main hall, the overhead lights flickered once, then again. Rule number 5 popped into my head. Keep the lights on in the main hall, always. I tapped the wall switch a few times, and the bulb steadied, humming weakly. Then I heard it, someone whispering. It was faint, coming from down the west corridor, the one I wasn't supposed to enter after midnight. I froze. The whispering got louder, like 2 people talking fast in another room. My name echoed through it, quiet, stretched out, like air being pushed through a throat that shouldn't work anymore. Michael. I turned toward the sound before I could stop myself, flashlight shaking in my hand. The west wing was pitch black. The door at the end cracked open just a few inches. I took a step forward. Then, rule number 2 flashed in my mind. Do not enter the west wing after midnight. I backed away slow, heart pounding. The whispering stopped. When I made it back to the guard office, the phone on the desk started to ring. One long tone, then silence. I stared at it. Rule number 7. Do not answer the phone unless it rings twice. I waited. The second ring never came. At exactly 2 a.m., I locked myself in the office, like the rule said. I turned on the little TV in the corner, all static, except one channel, the hospital's own security feed. Room 9's camera flickered to life. For a moment, I thought it was just dust floating in the lens, until one of the shadows moved. By the time the clock hit 2:45 a.m., I'd already decided I wasn't coming back for another shift. The hospital was wrong. It breathed when it should have been silent. Air moving through vents that hadn't run in decades. Lights humming like they were alive. Every minute in that office, I felt something pushing against the walls. like the building itself was trying to keep something inside. The security feed flickered again. Room 9. At first, the screen showed only the empty hallway outside, washed in pale light. Then a figure stepped into frame. A patient, hospital gown, bare feet, head tilted at a strange angle, like his neck had forgotten how to hold him upright. He was facing the camera, and then somehow his mouth began to move. I turned the volume knob on the monitor. Static hissed, and then through the white noise, I heard it. "You didn't lock the door." My stomach dropped. I checked the clipboard. Rule number 8. If you see a patient in uniform, escort them to room 9 and lock the door. But I hadn't seen anyone. Not until now. The monitor started to glitch, cycling through feeds on its own. The east wing, the lobby, the stairwell. Then it froze again, but this time the camera was showing the guard office. I could see myself sitting at the desk, watching the screen, and standing behind me in the doorway was a man in a hospital gown. I spun around, but the doorway was empty. The phone rang once. Silence. Then again. Twice. My hands shook as I picked up the receiver. "Ashbury Security?" A voice rasped through the line, dry, breathless, like air leaking out of a bag. "Rule 9. And the line went dead. The TV flickered back to room 9's camera feed. The door, which had been closed all night, was now wide open. A dark shape stood inside, motionless. The lights in the hall began to die, one by one, starting from the far end, moving toward the office. I grabbed my flashlight and ran. I don't remember choosing to go down that hall, but somehow I was there, standing outside room 9. The door was covered in deep scratches, like something had tried to claw its way out. The room inside smelled like rust and rot, thick enough to taste. There was something in the corner. At first, it looked like a pile of rags. Then, it moved. A face turned toward me, pale, wet, stretched too tight over the skull. Its mouth opened, and I heard my own voice echo from it. "Do not look inside room 9. The lights exploded overhead. When I came to, it was daylight. My flashlight was dead, the clipboard was gone, the building was quiet again, like nothing had ever happened. I left the keys on the front desk and walked out without looking back. I don't know what's in room 9, and I don't want to know, but last night I dreamed I was back in that hallway, and I could hear the phone ringing, once, then again. If you ever find yourself walking the empty halls of a place that should have stayed buried, remember this. Some rules aren't meant to be understood. They're warnings left behind by the ones who didn't make it out. Ashbury State Hospital may have closed its doors years ago, but buildings like that don't stay empty. They breathe, they wait, and every night when the lights go out, the rules get rewritten for whoever's next on the clock. So, if you see the job posting, if the pay looks too good, and the first rule says keep the lights on, just turn around. Because once you start following the rules, it's already too late to stop. Story 4. I took the job because it was quiet. That's what the manager told me anyway. "Easiest work you'll ever do," he said, holding out the keys to the caretaker's office. "Keep an eye on the gate, walk around the grounds once every hour, and make sure the lights stay on. That's it." The place was called Blackwood Rest Cemetery, about 20 minutes outside of town. Old stone walls, crooked headstones, and rows of ancient oak trees that bent over the graves like they were ashamed of what lay beneath. The kind of place you drive past during the day and swear you'll never go near after dark. I didn't mind. I'd done worse jobs. At least the dead didn't talk back, or so I thought. The first few nights were simple enough. I sat in the small brick office by the gates, drank coffee, listened to the radio, and watched the fog roll in from the woods. My only company was a battered clock on the wall and the low hum of the fluorescent lights that flickered every few minutes. There was a logbook I had to sign each hour after doing a patrol. My rounds took me past hundreds of graves, each one marked with a name long forgotten. Some of the stones had sunk halfway into the dirt. Some were just slabs with no words left at all, worn away by rain and time. I remember thinking how quiet it was, a heavy kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums until you start to hear things. The fifth night, I started hearing voices for real. It began as a sound, like whispering, faint, directionless. I figured it was the wind cutting through the trees, but when I stopped walking, the sound stops too. Then, just as I turned toward the mausoleum at the back of the property, I heard it again. Closer this time. Voice. Low. Gravelly. Still here. The flashlight trembled in my hand. I spun toward the nearest row of graves. Nothing but mist and granite staring back. The air was colder though. I could see my breath hanging there like smoke. When I got back to the office, I signed the patrol sheet. Tried to laugh it off. Probably a trick of the wind, I told myself. But my reflection in the window didn't look convinced. That was the first night I locked the office door. The next night, I brought extra batteries for my flashlight. Didn't help much. The fog was worse, thicker, clinging to the ground like it was breathing. The air smelled different too. Not just damp earth anymore. It was sweeter, like flowers that had been dead too long. My shift started at midnight. By 1:30, I'd already started hearing them again. The whispers. Only this time, they weren't scattered. They came from a direction. The far end of the cemetery. Past the row where the old graves sat half sunken in the mud. I told myself I'd check it once, mark it down in the log, and go back to the office. But the closer I got, the louder it became. It wasn't one voice anymore. It was dozens, layered over each other, like a crowd murmuring behind a wall. I swept the flashlight across the graves, and that's when I saw it. A handprint, pressed into the inside of one of the headstones. I don't mean carved. I mean the stone itself was bowed outward, like something inside had pushed. The impression was too real. Long fingers, dirt packed beneath where the nails should have been. My breath fogged in front of me, and I swear the ground shifted under my boots. The earth moved. The whispering grew louder, forming words I couldn't quite understand. I knelt to look closer, and that's when I saw the soil split open at the base of the grave. It wasn't a hand that reached out this time. It was a face, pale, half rotted. The eyes were empty sockets, and the mouth opened just wide enough to whisper something I still hear in my head. Stay with us. I stumbled back, hit the ground hard, dropped the flashlight. When I grabbed it again and shined the light, the face was gone. The soil was smooth, the grave undisturbed. I didn't finish my rounds that night. I locked myself in the office until dawn, listening to the soft sound of dirt shifting just outside the window. When the sun came up, I walked the grounds again. Everything was still, normal, except for one grave. Fresh soil, no name, and my boot prints leading straight to it. By the seventh night, I'd stopped pretending it was just my imagination. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard them. Soft at first, the whispers like wind through cracked stone. Then louder, sharper, calling my name. They knew it. They knew me. The manager didn't answer my calls anymore. The number on the hiring flyer just rang out to static. I even tried leaving before sunset, but the gate was chained shut. I hadn't noticed that before. That night, the lights went out around 2 in the morning. Not just flickered, gone. Every lamp, every bulb, black. The office was swallowed whole by the dark. The only light came from my flashlight, but even that felt weaker, like the darkness was thick enough to breathe. When I stepped outside, the fog was gone. In its place was something worse. Silence. No wind, no insects, not even the hum of the power lines. Just the heavy, unnatural stillness pressing down on me. I followed the narrow path toward the back of the cemetery, where the mausoleum stood. The air was cold enough to sting my teeth. My boots crunched over gravel that didn't echo. The door to the mausoleum was open. It had never been open before. Inside, the air was wet, the walls dripped with condensation, and the smell was thick, rotten and old perfume. Candles lined the stone floor, though I hadn't lit them. The light trembled like the flames were afraid to move. At the center of the room was the logbook, my logbook. Pages torn and scattered. Each one had a date, a time, and then, in my handwriting, a name. Hundreds of them. Names of the dead, and beneath each name, one word, written in red. Watching. Whispers came again, closer now, like they were crawling down the walls. Stay with us. The candles flared, the door slammed shut. The ground shuddered beneath me. I fell against the altar and felt something grab my ankle, cold, slick fingers curling around my leg. The graves outside were waking up. I could hear them, the soil shifting, bones creaking, the air filling with that awful wet sound of something dragging itself through the dirt. I ran, but the gate was gone. The road beyond it, gone. Just rows of graves, stretching into the darkness. And between them, figures, hundreds of them, pale faces, eyeless, standing still as headstones. They weren't reaching for me. They were waiting. Then I heard the voice again, the same one from the first night, right behind me. You signed the book. I looked down. The logbook was in my hand, open to a blank page, my pen already pressed against it. I don't remember writing my name. I just remember the dirt beneath my feet shifting, soft, welcoming. Now, when the new guard walks the grounds, I watch from beneath the soil. And when he hears the whispers, I hope he listens, because the job never ends. It just changes who's holding the flashlight. And that's it, at least for tonight. If this story gave you chills or made your hair stand on end, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button to Deadscape Diaries. There's always more lurking in the dark, waiting for you. Until next time, keep your eyes open, because the graves never really stay quiet.